Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well, and finally we can talk about the Elden Ring DLC officially. First of all, thank you to Bandai Namco Europe for providing me with an early review copy of the new Elden Ring DLC. It has been an absolute pleasure to dive into this expansion. The anticipation for this DLC has been immense, especially over the last 2 years as we've been creating content for Elden Ring, and the wait has definitely been worth it. This review will cover various aspects of the DLC, giving each part its due diligence, and diving into things but without spoilers. So if you don't want to know any spoilers or about the story and all of that, don't worry, we're not getting into detail into that kind of stuff. We're leaving that stuff for when the DLC actually comes out. So without further ado, let us get going. Please like and share this video and make sure to subscribe because there is a lot of exclusive content that's coming on the channel for the DLC very soon. So make sure to subscribe and let's get going with the review. So first we're gonna start with the gameplay, and one of the significant additions to the core mechanics is the Tree fragments. These items are scattered through the overworld and even in the legacy dungeons and can be consumed at grace points, similar to how you upgrade your flask through a new menu. To get the Tree fragments to their maximum level, you need a total of 50 fragments, which will allow you to fully level up to level 20. What they do is that they increase your attack power and damage negation. Now, from my tests, the attack power increase is around 5% per fragment, while the damage negation follows a different curve depending on your base value. I've done some testing with each level, and this is basically a curve that I've created so you can see how much is the increase, but overall from my testing it would give you triple the damage negation, which is very good I think because the DLC bosses are technically endgame bosses at this point. And I think this is a very needed mechanic because if you don't use them, it would be a good thing for challenge runners to do it, but for normal players it would be more incentivized to actually go and find these. And you can find them near grace points, Miquella crosses spread around the world, even some enemies and bosses drop them. This mechanic incentivizes exploration as you need these fragments to make the DLC easier. And the most important thing, don't worry, they do carry over NG+, which is a big relief for those planning to replay the DLC. Another very, and I can keep saying very for 30 minutes, new and useful mechanic was the recent stab. This is a lifesaver with the amount of items that you get in Elden Ring. So when you get an item or a key or a weapon or whatever, you're able to just open this tab and you can literally just see what is the last thing that you got and you can read the description. You don't have to look for it in the menu. This is one of the best quality of life additions they have done to the game, and I love it. Moving on to the visuals and the design. Now, one of the most impressive aspects of the DLC is the introduction of new biomes, which adds a completely fresh and dynamic feel to the world of Elden Ring. These biomes are diverse and visually stunning, each with its own unique atmosphere and design. The ancient ruins of Rahu, for example, offers a very lush green landscape mixed with ancient ruins, creating a visually appealing and graphically impressive environment. And this area really stands out for its beauty and its distinct feel, which is very different from anything we have seen in the previous Souls games. Another standout area is the mountain volcano area, which, although I can't show gameplay, is one of my favorite locations in the DLC. It's very fiery and rugged landscape and provides a very stark contrast to other areas and makes it very visually striking and memorable, and honestly it houses one of my favorite bosses in the entirety of Elden Ring. There's also a dark swamp, which we have seen glimpses of in the trailer, and it is focused on frenzy and it features enemies that also has a little bit of a horror factor and atmosphere, which was very interesting and very intense going through when playing the DLC. And it adds a little bit of a layer of danger and excitement to the exploration experience. There are also the Finger Ruins, which are related to some of the quest lines and the NPCs, and they're visually intriguing and massive. These ruins with their giant finger structures, they place emphasis on a very important piece of lore in Elden Ring, which you will explore in the DLC as you are going. There are also serene and calm locations, so this is something that I can't really show because of spoilers, but imagine Majula from Dark Souls 2 and it's a very similar feeling. It's one of the most beautiful and peaceful places in the DLC, and I can't wait for you guys to actually experience it. And lastly, the Silurian Coast, which is a very breathtaking area filled with blue flowers and rain, very reminiscent of Shrine of Amana from Dark Souls 2, but on a much grander scale. It's very beautiful scenery and it's very atmospheric and just a delightful experience going through it. So overall, the DLC offers a wide variety of visually impressive and well-designed area, and each location feels unique and adds to the richness of the Elden Ring world. Now, of course, there are also the castle area, which are, you will find some of them follow a similar theme, let's say, to what we saw in the main game, although with, of course, different architecture and different visuals. One of the areas that were like the highlight, which is the Shadow Keep, which is also an area that sort of branches into a lot of different areas. So there was a lot of verticality, there were a lot of like side things that you can do, a lot of places that you can go inside of the thing. So it needed a lot of exploration when doing that. It felt like Kanehurst Castle on a bigger scale, to be honest. That's how I felt like when I was playing it. So it wasn't like overly difficult, but like the exploration was very nice because it opened up like a lot of places that you can go to and you can keep exploring. So yeah, it was fun overall. And also at a certain point in the DLC, an event occurs that changes something in the world, which opens up new areas and reveals a little bit more about the story, which we'll be talking about without spoilers later on. This event impacts like the NPCs and the progression, and it adds a little bit of a different layer to the DLC when you're playing. And focusing on the progression, so basically there are main and side quest lines. One notable side quest involves Count Ymir, which we saw in the trailer, whose quest line basically spans the entire map and has significant story implications. There's also another path that leads to the Abyssal Woods, which offers also a lot of different exploration opportunities. Now, the DLC features new dungeons that follow the overall logic of the main game content, but completely introduce new styles and mechanics. These dungeons offer a fresh experience with unique traversal methods and visually distinct environments. Each dungeon provides valuable rewards, and some of the bosses found within are particularly impressive and challenging. The variety in dungeon design is also a welcome addition, and I find myself enjoying these new challenges that they presented much more than the vanilla dungeons, to be honest. The good thing about the DLC is that I didn't feel lost, especially with the main questline, because like you meet the NPCs, and basically when you progress, you will find notes that they left you, in order to tell you like where they are going and what they are doing. So they will give you vague directions, like we're going to check out the thing in the west, for example. So you go to the west and you will continue the progression from there. It doesn't tell you exactly what to do, but it gives you overall directions of where to go. And it was a nice way, like it's not spoon feeding you, but at the same time, it's not letting you just thrown everywhere. The optional areas, they also give you general directions, but you will need to do a little bit more digging and exploration to actually find the the location that you are looking for. And getting into the new weapons, armors, talismans, and magic introduced in the Elden Ring DLC. So in terms of weapons, the DLC adds around 100 new weapons, including new weapon categories, as you know. Now, visually, these weapons are very impressive, with some truly unique and cool designs that we didn't see in Elden Ring before. And one of the most enjoyable combinations I found was the perfumer's weapons, where you can combine two types of perfumes, one in each hand, and you can mix their powers, such as, for example, fire and ice. It looks visually very nice, and I've always had a favorite thing like of mixing elements, so like the Sword of Night and Flame. There is also stuff like, if you remember in Dark Souls 2, there was the two smelter weapons where you can do attack with them both together with their visuals, so it was really nice. Now, some of the boss weapons stand out due to their interesting combos and weapon arts. However, I found some of them to be a bit too flashy, especially some of the late game ones. And while it's great to see the incorporation of boss attacks into weapon arts, the visuals can sometimes be overwhelming and cluttering the screen with too many effects. In terms of the Ashes of War, there are about 25 new ones that you can equip to weapons. These add some really nice moves to the weapons, including some enhanced versions of fan-favorite Ashes. However, a minor disappointment is that many weapons don't have unique weapon arts. Now, although this is also the case in the main game, having the ability to actually customize the weapons with the Ashes of Wars helps mitigate this issue, but I wouldn't say that there isn't a lot of new Ashes of War. There is a lot of them, but like what I mean, for example, is that there is a weapon that looks really good, but it doesn't have a weapon art. So like it has like the default weapon art. So that was I felt that was a little bit weird, to be honest, but yeah, I digress. Now, the expansion of weapon categories is a notable addition. I've tried all of the new categories and they are quite interesting. However, I feel that they could have expanded more upon them. So for example, the new throwing dagger category, there is only one throwing dagger, which was a bit surprising, but I don't know. There is also the martial arts and the beast claw movesets, which are very exciting, but one of the things I noticed is that they can be tricky to use effectively against bosses, mainly because of their complex combos. Now, this might improve with the right build and talisman setups and maybe I don't know, like future patches. But this is something that needs to be kept into consideration. I hope they actually enhance that a little bit to make it much more like user friendly, especially against the bosses. If I were to choose one of my favorite new movesets, I would say it is the light greatsword. It really strikes a perfect balance between the heaviness of a greatsword and the agility of a lighter sword, which feels very good to play with. Now, in terms of armors, there are about 40 new armor pieces in the DLC. There is a mix of individual pieces and full sets. These armors offer a great variety, from light to heavy sets, each with its own unique design and functionality. Now, the design of these armors are very impressive, whether they are boss armors, human NPC armors, or enemy drops. And the good thing is some of them, they expand upon the lore of certain factions in the game and add more depth to the game's world and the lore. And the expansion also introduces familiar factions in new contexts, which is very exciting for both lore enthusiasts and fans who loved certain armors and would like expansion to those armors. So that's something to look forward to. I would say the armors are very nice. I think they did really well with the armors, honestly. In terms of talisman, this DLC introduces 40 new talismans, each with unique effects that enhance the gameplay. Now, some talismans are expansions of existing ones with +3 variations, making them more powerful for endgame content, specifically because the DLC is technically endgame, so they are very useful, definitely. Some of the talismans have very interesting effects. One of them actually grants iframes to backsteps. When I checked, it was around 12 frames, so that adds a strategic new layer to combat, but of course it has downsides. There are also talismans focused on stances, reflecting the new stances introduced in the DLC. This variety ensures that the players can find talismans that suit their playstyle and challenges that they face. Now, in terms of magic, the DLC adds around 40 new spells, sorceries, and incantations, expanding the magical arsenal available to players. They introduced new schools of magic, which is always exciting. So, for example, the Spiral incantations and Mesmir's Fire incantations are some of the new additions that offer unique gameplay mechanics. The new Dragon incantations are also particularly very powerful. Now, while the new spells are a great addition, I do wish they had expanded more on some of the existing schools. However, on the other hand, the new magic schools are very nice. I really like what they did with them. They have some very creative ideas, and they range different effects from offensive attacks to defensive buffs, adding more variety and options for magic users. The variety in spell ranges is also notable, with options for close range, long range, and dual-purpose spells. And of course, in addition to weapons, armors, and magic, the DLC also introduces new consumables. I didn't really focus much on the consumables during my playthrough, but there are some interesting ones that fans of previous Souls games will recognize. But they expanded them with a variety of things that I think people would be very happy about. That's the only thing that I'm going to be saying about this, I think. We will be covering all of these spells, weapons, and everything in the DLC, so make sure to subscribe for that so that you get all of that content when the DLC is released. Now, in terms of music and sound design. Now, music has always been a core part of the Souls series, and this DLC is no exception. From the trailers alone, fans were very excited about the soundtrack. Although I can't discuss specific endgame bosses' music, I can say that there is a very good variety, which is very impressive. There are calm tracks that set a serene mood, and others are action-packed tracks that heighten the intensity of battles. Some pieces really reminded me of the classical style of Dark Souls 1, while others offered an entirely new experience. The late-game bosses usually have the most memorable soundtracks, and I'm excited for everyone to hear them soon. Now, in terms of story, the NPCs are very well developed from what I saw, each with their own unique backgrounds and goals. What I particularly enjoyed was how interconnected their questlines are. While each NPC has their personal objectives, they all share a common goal that ties their stories together. This interconnectedness adds a layer of depth and dynamism as, some of the choices you make, they affect the choices that happens with the NPCs. The voice acting is very good, as always, making the NPCs very expressive and engaging, and the quality of their dialogue and the performance really brings these characters to life, enhancing the overall storytelling experience of those NPCs. Unfortunately, I cannot discuss specific story details due to spoilers, but what I can say is that my initial playthrough left me puzzled by many of the events. I didn't understand what was going on. I finished the DLC, I don't understand what's happening. So it wasn't until my second and third playthrough where I paid closer attention to the NPC interactions, and I actually started doing the NPC questlines that I began to piece together the narrative. As I mentioned before, there is an event in the DLC that happens while you are playing that sort of changes the dynamics of the worlds and opens up new areas, revealing more about the story and the character motivations. One intriguing aspect of the story is that, how do I say it? like it subverts expectations about certain characters' motives and intentions. So like it presents a narrative twist that makes sense within the context but might not be immediately obvious. It does add a layer of complexity and makes it more engaging as you uncover the truth of the world, whether it is in the Land of Shadows or the Lands Between. Now, while I can't provide specifics, I can say that the story elements tied to the late game content are particularly intriguing. Now, there is one thing, though, and this is complete speculation, is that I suspect that there might be additional content or quest lines added with the day one patch, as in certain aspects I felt that some elements were just felt incomplete. And also there were things from the trailer that I didn't encounter during my playthrough. Now again, this is purely speculation, and as I said, maybe I didn't find those parts, but this is just something to, like, I will expand upon later on once we get the day one patch. And the DLC releases, we might be able to elaborate on that, but again, this is just speculation, and I really hope they actually do. It's because, as I said, some parts of the NPC quest lines, I felt like there was something more, and they placed a lot of emphasis, when the DLC, when they talked, they placed a lot of emphasis on the story and expanding upon the world and tying loose ends and stuff like that, and I felt like there was something still missing. So I hope there is something still missing. I would be like very happy. Like I'm not mad that if they like the review copy they gave us had, let's say, locked content. I would be very happy, to be honest, because if they locked it, that means that there is like more spoilers, and they didn't want like stuff like that to be possibly leaked or all of that. So that's actually very good. Now, in terms of the bosses, the DLC doesn't disappoint. The visual design of the bosses is some of the most intriguing and detailed in the Souls series, I'm gonna be honest. They have some very unique and erratic movesets that make battles very challenging and exciting, and while there are humanoid bosses, the DLC also introduces some, I'm going to be saying, very unusual and visually stunning bosses. And also, you might encounter some, I don't want to call them reskins, but you might meet familiar bosses. Now, for example, early on you can encounter a Ghost Flame Dragon, which, despite using the same base as the normal dragons in the game, it looks incredible with the black cloth drapes and the ghostly appearance. However, it is worth noting that some bosses appear multiple times throughout the DLC, such as the aforementioned Ghost Flame Dragon, which you encounter in different locations, and there are some bosses that you have met in the main game that you will find, although don't worry, it's not a lot, so don't worry, they didn't reuse a lot of the bosses. There's only a couple of ones, and they put them for lore reasons, because they fit in the place that they put them in, so don't worry about that. And also, something worth mentioning is that this DLC has some of the best arenas for bosses. Like some of the bosses, they have really stunning visuals and very like weird looking environments that they look really nice. So now, despite some of the movesets of some of the bosses being a little bit too flashy, the quality of the boss encounters are really nice. Like the mix between the music and the arenas and the like visual design of the bosses, it really makes things like very nice. I really love that. So this brings us to the final question. Is this the best From Software DLC to date? Now, when comparing the quantity of content to previous DLCs, such as for Dark Souls 3, the Elden Ring DLC clearly offers much more. There are around 100 new weapons, 40 new armors, 40 new spells, 40 new talismans, and this is a significant increase from previous games, which had much fewer new additions in each category. And in terms of quality, the DLC excels in many areas. The design of the new bosses, armor, and spells is top-notch, with high-quality models and interesting mechanics. And the introduction of new schools of magic and the variety of the new spells also adds some really cool layer to the gameplay. And as I mentioned, some of the bosses in the DLC are some of the most intriguing and visually impressive I've seen in the Souls series, and they have very unique designs and erratic movesets that makes the battles challenging and exciting. And as I mentioned, some of the boss arenas are also among the best in the series, with stunning visuals and environments. However, the main concern for me was the story aspect, and as I mentioned, this could be a very high possibility. There are a lot of other games that did the same thing, where they locked endgame content from reviewers in the case of any spoilers and all of that, and I actually hope that is the case, because as I said, there was a lot of emphasis about like the story and all of that, and I felt like there was still something more to be done in terms of the story. So I hope that is actually the case. And this uncertainty prevents me from definitively calling it the best From Software DLC, Like the potential for additional story content in the day one patch keeps me hopeful. But overall, if we forget about that, the Elden Ring DLC is very impressive and comprehensive addition to the game. It offers a wealth of new content, high quality design, and engaging gameplay, and while there are areas that could have been expanded further, such as certain schools of magic, the DLC does stand out as a very significant and valuable expansion to the Elden Ring experience. Visually, the DLC is stunning, and the new areas, bosses, and environments are breathtaking. Despite some of the weapons and the spells being a bit too flashy, the overall quality of the content is excellent. So in conclusion, the Elden Ring DLC is a must-play for fans of the series. It brings a lot to the table, both in terms of quantity and quality, and provides an enriching experience that expands the world of Elden Ring in meaningful ways. My main tip for you when you want to play the DLC is make sure to engage with the NPCs. Do their quest lines so that you actually understand what is going on in a much bigger way, explore some of the new areas, and enjoy the wealth of content this DLC has to offer. And as I mentioned, make sure to subscribe to the channel because there is a lot of interesting and amazing content that's coming on the channel, whether it's guides, showcases, there is a lot of stuff to show, so make sure to subscribe and like this video and share and enjoy the DLC experience. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, I guess I'll be seeing you later. Bye bye.